My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this...
I mean, it was the same height. You know, it would be...
Something shocking just unfolded behind palace walls. Prince Andrew, of all people, was chosen to read Queen Elizabeth's final will, and what he revealed left the royal family stunned. Unexpected heirs, controversial decisions, and a last message that changes everything. What did the Queen leave behind? Stay tuned for the explosive details. As the royal family gathered in Buckingham Palace, anticipation filled the air. The time had finally come to read Queen Elizabeth's last will, a document that could change everything. Family members sat in tense silence, each wondering what the late Queen had decided. Then came the biggest shock of the day. The person chosen to read the will wasn't King Charles, nor was it Princess Anne. Instead, the responsibility fell on Prince Andrew. Gasps rippled through the room. Of all the people in the royal family, why Andrew? His recent controversies had made him the least expected choice. Yet here he stood, holding the sealed document that could alter royal history. Some exchanged uneasy glances.
There was no indication to me or anybody else.
King Charles remained still, his jaw tightening. Princess Anne, always composed, showed no emotion. Prince William barely concealed his surprise. Was this the Queen's way of giving Andrew one last duty? Or was there a deeper reason behind this decision? The air felt heavier as Andrew stepped forward, gripping the will with slightly shaking hands. The answers were moments away, but no one could have predicted what would come next. The sound of the wax seal breaking echoed through the silent chamber. All eyes were fixed on the envelope in Andrew's hands, their breath held as he unfolded the first page. For a moment, he hesitated. The weight of his mother's final words rested on his shoulders. Then, clearing his throat, he began. The will started with a message of gratitude. Queen Elizabeth thanked her family for their years of service to the monarchy, acknowledging their dedication.
My government's priority has always been to secure the United Kingdom.
But beyond these formalities, everyone knew the real revelations were yet to come. Andrew's voice remained steady as he continued. Charles sat rigid, his hands folded tightly on his lap. William barely moved, his focus sharp. Princess Anne's expression was unreadable, but she listened intently. Then came the moment of truth, the division of the Queen's most prized properties and possessions. The expectation was clear. Charles, as the new king, would inherit everything of importance. But as Andrew continued reading, it became clear that the Queen had different plans. A shift in the room's energy was palpable. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uneasy glances. The royal family was about to hear decisions that would challenge tradition in ways they never saw coming. Andrew's voice remained steady as he read the first major inheritance. Windsor Castle would go to King Charles. This was expected. It was the royal residence of the monarch.
Of her new role, the steadfast devotion to duty on which...
A symbol of continuity and power. But then, the will took a sharp turn. To my beloved daughter Anne, I leave Sandringham Estate. A ripple of surprise spread through the room. Sandringham had long been tied to the ruling king. To give it to Anne instead of Charles was unheard of. Charles's face remained impassive, but those closest to him could see the subtle tightening of his jaw. He had anticipated full control over these estates, yet the Queen had decided otherwise. Andrew pressed on. The Balmoral estate will be shared among the family. This was even more shocking. Balmoral had always belonged to a single sovereign ruler, yet the Queen had decided to split it. The decision defied royal tradition and hinted at her desire for unity. The implications were huge. Would this cause more division within the family, or was this the Queen's attempt at preventing it? Eyes darted around the room. Charles was visibly uncomfortable. Anne remained poised. William shifted in his seat, taking in every detail.
It didn't happen. There is no manual.
The Queen's will was rewriting royal expectations, but there were still more surprises to come. The Queen didn't just divide estates and wealth, she left a legacy for the younger generation. To Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, I leave the Vladimir tiara, Andrew read. This tiara, a historic symbol of royal grace, was now in Catherine's hands. The message was clear. She was seen as a key figure in the monarchy's future. Catherine's expression remained composed, but those who knew her well could see the weight of the moment. This was more than just an inheritance. it was a responsibility. Then came the Queen's message to her great-grandchildren. To my great-grandson, Prince George, I leave not only treasures, but also the wisdom of the past. The Queen emphasized George's duty, his responsibility to lead one day.
Sort of bigger picture. And that contrast between some of the amazing things that are going on the ground.
Next was Princess Charlotte. Unlike past traditions where only male heirs were given significant recognition, Charlotte was directly acknowledged. The monarchy is strongest when each member understands their role, the Queen had written. This was a groundbreaking statement, one that suggested a shift toward a more inclusive future. But the biggest shock was yet to come. As Andrew turned the page, the tension in the room grew thicker. Then, the name Prince Harry was spoken. Many had assumed that, after stepping away from royal duties, Harry would be left out completely. But instead, the Queen had left him something unexpected, a ceremonial sword that once belonged to King George VI. The room reacted instantly. William shifted in his seat, his expression unreadable. Charles's fingers curled slightly, as though suppressing a reaction.
He was being told certain things by people within his office, and at the same time...
The sword wasn't just any gift. It was a symbol of power and duty. Some saw it as a peace offering, a message that Harry was still part of the family. Others believed it carried a deeper meaning, a reminder of what he had left behind. Regardless of intent, the message was clear. The Queen had not forgotten Harry, even in her final words. As Andrew neared the end of the will, the Queen's final words struck a deep chord. She spoke of unity, strength, and the importance of family ties. She urged them to look beyond differences, to support one another despite disagreements. It was a plea, a final wish for peace. Andrew's voice wavered slightly as he finished reading. For once, the room wasn't filled with tension. It was filled with reflection. Even Charles, who had shown visible discomfort throughout, remained silent, his gaze distant. The Queen's words had power. Whether her family would honor them, however, remained to be seen.
I worry about your grandchildren and everybody else's grandchildren, as well as my own.
The Queen's will had been read, but the real battle was only just beginning. Each royal family member had just learned their fate, and not everyone was satisfied. King Charles sat motionless, his face unreadable. The redistribution of estates had left him in an uncomfortable position. Windsor Castle was his, as expected, but losing Sandringham to Anne and sharing Balmoral with other family members was not part of his vision. For decades, Charles had waited for his time to rule. He had imagined himself taking full control of the royal estates, managing them as past monarchs had done. But his mother had rewritten the rules, changing the very foundation of how the royal family operated. Would Charles challenge the decisions made in the will? Some insiders believed that he would try to find a way to restore the estates under his control. However, going against the Queen's final wishes would be highly controversial. It could create a public backlash, painting him as a ruler who disregarded his mother's intentions.
It is something he's been waiting for, probably spent more time thinking about it.
Then there was Princess Anne. She had been given a historic responsibility, but how did she truly feel about it? Unlike her brothers, Anne had never sought the throne, nor had she ever been someone who craved public recognition. But now, with Sandringham in her hands, she was placed in a position of unexpected power. Would she embrace this role as a new influential figure within the monarchy, or would she quietly manage it in the background? Many saw her as the Queen's most loyal child, and perhaps that's why she had been entrusted with something so significant. Meanwhile, Prince William watched closely. He knew that these changes in property division and inheritance could affect his future reign. One day he would become king, but the monarchy he inherited would be very different from the one his grandmother had ruled for 70 years. Would he try to undo these changes when he ascended to the throne? Or would he learn from them and follow in the Queen's footsteps? The royal family had always operated on tradition and structure, but the Queen's will had introduced an element of unpredictability. The monarchy stood at a critical crossroads, and its future was more uncertain than ever. The Queen's will wasn't just about property. It was a blueprint for the monarchy's future. By breaking traditions, she has left her family with choices to make. Will they honor her wishes, or will conflict arise? One thing is certain, the monarchy has changed forever. What do you think? Was the Queen's will a step forward or a challenge to royal traditions? Let us know in the comments. And if you thought this revelation was shocking, wait until you hear what insiders are saying about King Charles's reaction. Click on the next video now.